Good day, and welcome back to the next video in our series on corresponding squares. This time I'm going to look at just a slightly different position from last time. One of the Grigoriev positions, it's just moved up one rank, and yet it completely changes the evaluation. So I think that's important to understand how sort of precise and detailed you need to be when you're looking at corresponding squares, and actually just the whole idea that you can come up with fascinating results from slightly changed positions. So you can see the position there we're going to be looking at. It's the Grigoriev position moved up by one rank. That's all that happened. Last time it was pawn c2, pawn d3, pawn c3, but you can see the position there I've outlined is that now the white pawn is on c3 and the d4, and the black pawn has a pawn on c4. Now this does change the evaluation. Let's go across to the analysis board, and so I've set the position up there, and I'll just run my normal little program here called program, and this is a Gregorian position 2 moved up one rank, and you can look that the stars, the key squares, are all over the place. It's totally splattered everywhere. I mean, there's a sort of strange reason why it looks like that, but the reality is what's that telling you is that it's basically now it's a win for a white. And now we're going to work out how that's the case. How can this be a win for white? Last time, if black was on the right cycle, inverted commas, he could draw, and really just depended upon where your starting positions were. But now, basically, white wins, wherever the kings are within reason. Now, what I suggest that you do here is that you should spend however long, 5 minutes or whatever you think is appropriate, analyzing the position, seeing if you can come up with the first of all key squares and the corresponding squares yourself, and see why this position is completely different. So when you've done that, come back and we'll go through the same analysis. Now I'm going to follow Keres in a bit. Keres doesn't really put his corresponding squares down like he did the first time, but we can read through the text. That's obviously what he's done in the background. So let's do that ourselves. And first of all, we want to mark up the key squares. Now, if you remember, we're just going to move the key squares one forward from where they were last time, and convince yourself that they are the key squares. Now, on the queen side, remember the whole point about this is there's two access points. So from last time, the key squares on the queen side access route are a4 and b4. I mean, convince yourself that if the white king gets there, he'll shoulder the black king away and win the c pawn, most likely. And the king side access points, key squares e3 and f3. Once again, I mean, I pointed out last time, the reality is it's actually, these are the important squares. This e5 square on this side, the black king doesn't have access to that square, and that will prevent him from stopping the white king from shouldering around and winning the position. We've gone through that last time. We won't cover it this time. So now that we've got the key squares mapped out, we can do the sort of the backwardation, as it were, and work out where the corresponding squares are. Now, what you will remember from last time is that basically we say we'll mark a square, and then the idea is that where can black be to cover? If white's on the yellow square, notice last time I actually broke my skid and the arrows weren't working properly, but now they're working properly, so that's good. So if white is on the yellow square, then black has to be on the b5 square. I remember we pointed out last time that if he was on the a5 square, then he'll be too slow getting around the other side of the board. I mean, you can check that quickly. 1, 2, 3, 4 squares, and on the key square, 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm too slow, right? So that's why it have to be on a b5 and not a5. So now we just work backwards based on what we saw last time. So just for convenience, we called the a2 square 2, and then, but actually the main route is you go from 1 to 3 to 4 to 5 and to 6. That was the main route for white, going from the queen side to the king side. And then for black, it was the main one was 1 to 3 to 4 to 5 and 6, and we also had this square. So this was the matched position, right? So as long as black had the, let's say, opposition in inverted commas, then he'd be able to defend off the attacks, and there was no triangulation on what was a1 square, but it's now a2 square, because black had the corresponding square, which was b5, and is now b6. Everything's matched, arrows anymore. So that was the situation we had last time around. And you think, okay, well, it's exactly the same. It must be exactly the same. But this is where we go back to my concepts of, action at a distance and white being able to do things which black cannot match. So let's see how that works. I think now we will bring up what Keres says about this position, and we'll see what is going on. By now, if you couldn't analyze it and come to the solution yourself before, you look at it now, maybe it'll become a bit clearer about where the triangulation is likely to happen. So let me see if I can bring up the Keres bit. Okay, so there's the diagram at the bottom left column. Let's just start reading from the last column there. Compared with the similar positions we have seen, this one contains an interesting new possibility. In order to give black the most favorable defensive position, we have placed his king on e4 and given him the move. But this does not change the basic characteristics of the position. Let us first see how black copes with white's usual winning method. Okay, so let's go through that. We go king to f4. Oh, okay, so who's the move? White's the move at the moment. So black the move in this position. Sorry about that. So if black goes king f4, and if white tries to go to the king side, get around the king side, king f2, Keres given that question mark. That would not be the way it was referenced in books today, because it's probably dubious, because king f2 mean would you be giving away the win, but that doesn't happen, right? So black waits, and then white realizes, oh, I've got to come back. He actually gives a line there, king g3, king d3, d5, and you can see that the actual, you can run through that line yourself, that black ends up with a c-pawn, which he will, bishop pawn against the queen. You can see that 7d8 queen, and then c2 is a draw, because the white king is too far away. So that's a standard queen and queen versus pawn endgame draw. This means that white's usual win does not suffice, but he does have a chance to penetrate via the queen's wing. Let's have a look. So king f4. So white decides, let me go the other way. King d2. King e4 has got to step on the sort of the brown number 5, orange number 5. White goes to the blue square, king c2, and black has to do the same thing. He's moved on to the blue square, king d5. So corresponding squares all exactly the same. Now the trick happens. So black must be ready to answer king d2 with king e4 and king a3 with king d5, right? And if white just goes backwards and forwards on the second rank, that's all that's going to happen. However, there is one possibility. I'm going to mark it up as square 7. Do that. King c1. Now, you can see from that, white is now threatening to go to corresponding squares 3, corresponding squares 4, and corresponding square 5, right? There's nowhere that black can do that. He's going to be triangulated effectively, right? So the waiting move zugzwangs black. If he plays king e4, i.e. going to the king side, then king b2, king d5, king a3, white penetrates on the queen side, whereas king c6 fails to, well, king d2, king e3, and he penetrates on the king side. That's a bit sad. Having seen this winning method, we should be able to evaluate correctly the same position one rank further down. Okay, so we will look at those positions later, but let's just close up with just seeing how that works. So we'll play through, let's do king e4, so he blocks that side. So king b2, can't make it back in time, but let's see what happens. King d5 and king a3, go there, and he's going to lose. So I find that that's quite interesting, right? So the only difference here is one rank further forwards, and what happens is that actually opens up an extra few squares. I actually think the same thing happens. I'll just see if I can mark this square here, black number 8, because that's 4, 5, and 6. And black cannot move to that square because it's covered by the pawn, right? So I think that there's more than one way to skin a cat in this case. So what I would like to quickly look at now is Venn diagram thing. Okay, cool. So you can see that's what I've marked out on the analysis board, and you can see what's going on with the Venn diagram there. That actually, tweaked it a little bit. Always like improving things, right? So. The only difference between this and the previous Grigoriev position is that we now have that square C1, and you can see C1 has a different colored jump. C1 goes to D2, C1 goes to C2, and C1 goes to B2. And they are transitions which have no corresponding pair on the black side, and that's why black can't match effectively what is. white's triangulation of the position, giving up the move. Black has to move to the wrong corresponding square and loses. Okay, so I hope that was interesting. I was trying to sort of emphasize that you really have to look at these things in great detail, and small changes make big differences, hence the old butterfly effect. I hope you enjoyed that, and thank you very much for watching.